Yeah, it's just taken up a lot of my time, but it's super great, and I think we're doing a lot of stuff we're really proud of.
Esta persona de aquí es Sam Altman, una de las personas que actualmente más podría influenciar al futuro de la inteligencia artificial y por tanto al futuro de la humanidad. Porque Sam Altman es el CEO de una de las compañías protagonistas en toda esta revolución que estamos viviendo, OpenAI. La empresa tras DALL-E 2, ChatGPT, la que nos promete en un futuro próximo a GPT-4, y la empresa cuya misión corporativa es asegurarse de que la inteligencia artificial general beneficie a toda la humanidad.
I don't think people are interested in OpenAI because of my involvement. I think OpenAI has managed to pull together the most talent-dense researchers and engineers in the field of AI who have done just like incredible work. And I think what people are interested in is like OpenAI from a cold start a few years ago has managed to do this thing that I think is going to be incredibly important to the next many decades at least of society and how we all live our lives and what we do and what's possible, and I think it's going to be tremendously good.
¿Y qué es esto que estás viendo aquí? Bueno, pues esta es una entrevista que se produjo hace unos pocos días a Sam, donde tratan un montón de temas que tanto a mí, como a ti, como a cualquier entusiasta de la inteligencia artificial, pues nos tiene que interesar. Y es que cuando una persona con la visión, pero también la posición de Sam Altman habla, pues lo más interesante que podemos hacer es escuchar. Y es por eso que he querido traer al canal pues algunos de los fragmentos más interesantes de esta entrevista, subtitulados, reorganizados por temas, contextualizados con algunos comentarios míos, para que podáis escuchar lo que tiene que decir pues uno de los grandes protagonistas del futuro. Y donde se tratarán temas como ChatGPT, DALL-E 2, GPT-4, opiniones sobre Google, Microsoft e incluso la fusión nuclear. Escucha.
Why do you think that ChatGPT and DALL-E so surprised people?
I genuinely don't know. I've reflected on it a lot. We had the model for ChatGPT in the API for like, I don't know, 10 months or something before we made ChatGPT. And I sort of thought someone was going to just build it or whatever, and that, you know, enough people had played around with it. Definitely if you make a really good user experience on top of something, and like one thing that I very deeply believed was the way people wanted to interact with these models was via dialogue. And we kept telling people this, we kept trying to convince people to build it, and people wouldn't quite do it, so we finally said, all right, we're just going to do it. Yeah, I think the pieces were there for a while. One of the reasons I think DALL-E surprised people is if you asked 5 or 7 years ago, the kind of ironclad wisdom on AI. First it comes for physical labor, truck driving, working in a factory, then truck driving. Then the sort of less demanding cognitive labor, then the really demanding cognitive labor like computer programming, and then very last of all, or maybe never, because maybe it's like some deep human special sauce was creativity. And of course we can look now and say, well, it really looks like it's going to go exactly the opposite direction. But I think that is not super intuitive, and so I can see why DALL-E surprised people.
Y esta última idea que comenta es algo que se recoge muy bien en un tuit que me gusta compartir mucho del propio Sam Altman, que dice lo siguiente. Fijaos, este tuit es de 2021 y ya decía: predicción. La inteligencia artificial causará que el precio del trabajo que sucede enfrente de un ordenador decrezca mucho más rápido que el precio del trabajo que sucede en el mundo físico. Esto es lo opuesto de lo que mucha gente, incluido él, esperaba, y tendrá efectos extraños. ¿Y por qué sucede esto? Bueno, pues porque todo trabajo que suceda enfrente de una pantalla es más propenso a estar digitalizado, y al estar digitalizado contamos con más datos para poder entrenar a la inteligencia artificial. Por eso contamos con sistemas como ChatGPT, que se basa en texto, o DALL-E 2, que se basa en imágenes, y nos cuesta mucho más ver ejemplos de robótica o ejemplos médicos que puedan ser efectivos por la falta de datos. Y es esta falta de datos lo que ha invertido pues esta secuencia de hitos que creíamos que iba a lograr la inteligencia artificial. Sobre todo esto también hay otra cosa que ha sorprendido a Sam, y ha sido pues el impacto que ha tenido la propia herramienta ChatGPT.
I would have expected maybe like one order of magnitude less of everything, like one order of magnitude less of hype, one order of magnitude less of users, but I genuinely felt somewhat confused about why ChatGPT did, One of the things we really believe is that the most responsible way to put this out in society is very gradually, and to get people, institutions, policymakers, get them familiar with it, thinking about the implications, feeling the technology, getting a sense for what it can do and can't do, rather than drop a super powerful AGI in the world all at once. And so we put GPT-3 out almost 3 years ago. And then we put it into an API I think it was maybe like June of 2.5 years ago. the incremental update from that to ChatGPT, I felt like should have been predictable, and I want to like do more introspection on why I was sort of miscalibrated on that. We have like an internal process where we kind of try to break things and study impacts. We use external auditors. We have external red teamers. We work with other labs and have safety organizations look at stuff. ChatGPT is going to cause or is causing. There's, I think, a big one going now about the impact of this on education, academic integrity, all of that. But starting these now, where the stakes are still relatively low, rather than just put out what the whole industry will have in a few years with no time for society to update, I think would be bad. COVID did show us, for better or for worse, or at least me, that society can update to like massive changes sort of faster than I would have thought in many ways. But I still think like, given the magnitude of the economic impact we expect here, more gradual is better. And so putting out a very weak and imperfect system like ChatGPT, and then making it a little better this year, a little better later this year, a little better next year, that seems much better than the alternative.
Y esta es una cosa que me ha parecido súper interesante, ¿no? Porque existe esta idea de que muchas de estas empresas que están liderando ahora mismo el progreso de la inteligencia artificial, pues se mueven bajo este mantra de Silicon Valley de muévete rápido y rompe cosas, ¿no? Esta filosofía de ser ágiles, de sacar tu producto rápido a mercado sin reflexionar mucho de las implicaciones que pueda tener, de forzar a que se abran ciertos debates que serán necesarios cuando estas tecnologías estén. Y esto, pues, en algunos casos se ha criticado. Y aquí me parece muy interesante lo que comenta Sam sobre cómo su filosofía no es tanto moverse rápido y romper cosas, sino vamos a sacar productos que todavía son imperfectos para que poco a poco la sociedad se vaya adaptando a ellos. Es cierto que cuando sacan ChatGPT, pues esto genera una revolución en la educación y muchos alumnos ahora pueden utilizarlo para hacer sus deberes, pero es cierto que esto no deja de ser una herramienta muy imperfecta que en muchos de estos casos pues no va a ser útil. Lo que ha forzado herramientas como ChatGPT o DALL-E 2 es que se empiece a hablar de una forma más realista de una situación que desde hace años se viene anticipando, pero que no se estaba comentando. Así que en ese sentido pues le doy la razón a Sam. Y sobre el impacto que ha tenido ChatGPT precisamente en educación, comenta esto.
I get it. I get why educators feel the way they feel about this, and probably like this is just a preview of what we're going to see in a lot of other areas. I think this is just the new. We're going to try to you know do some things in the short term, and there may be ways we can help teachers be like a little bit more likely to detect output or anyone output of like a GPT-like system, but honestly, a determined person is going to get around them. And I don't think it'll be something society can or should rely on long term. We're just in a new world now. Like generated text is something we all need to adapt to. And that's fine. We adapted to, you know, calculators and changed what we tested for in math classes, I imagine. This is a more extreme version of that, no doubt. But also the benefits of it are more extreme as well. You know, we hear from teachers who are understandably very nervous about the impact of this on homework. We also hear a lot from teachers who are like, wow, this is like an unbelievable personal tutor for each kid. And I think that I have used it to learn things myself and found it like much more compelling than other ways I've learned things in the past. Like I would now much rather have ChatGPT teach me about something than go read a textbook. So, you know, it's like an evolving world and we'll all adapt and I think be better off for it. And we won't want to go back.
Y aquí ha comentado una cosa muy interesante que se ha hablado mucho en las últimas semanas y es esta idea de poder detectar cuando un texto ha sido generado por inteligencia artificial, ¿no? Si un alumno te ha hecho los deberes con ChatGPT o GPT-4. He visto a muchos profesores compartiendo algunas herramientas que ya hay comerciales, algunos expertos también lo han compartido y lo que tenéis que saber es que estos sistemas van a ser defectuosos. Yo lo llevo diciendo mucho tiempo y expertos de la inteligencia artificial también lo han compartido y es que es muy difícil poder tener un sistema que pueda detectar por qué un texto está generado por inteligencia artificial que luego otra inteligencia artificial generadora de texto no pueda volver a superar. Y por tanto no debemos confiar en que en un futuro próximo estas herramientas existan. Y esto lo comenta muy bien Sam.
You know, we will experiment with this. Other people will too. I think it is important for the transition. But I would caution policy, national policy, individual schools or whatever from relying on this because I don't, like, fundamentally, I think it's impossible to make it perfect. People will figure out how much of the text they have to change. There will be other things that modify the outputted text. I think it's good to pursue, and we will. But I think what's important to realize is like the playing field has shifted, and that's fine. There's good and bad, and we just figure out like rather than try to go back, we figure out the way forward.
Y ahora que están hablando de herramientas que transforman el tablero del juego, GPT-4. ¿Qué esperar de esta tecnología? Hay muchos rumores que comentan que este podría ser un modelo muchísimo más grande que GPT-3, hasta el punto de llegar a los 100 billones de parámetros. ¿Es esto cierto? ¿Y qué podemos esperar de GPT-4? Y bueno, ¿cuándo lo van a sacar?
It'll come out at some point when we are like confident that we can do it safely and responsibly. I think in general, we are going to release technology much more slowly than people would like. We're going to sit on it for much longer than people would like. And eventually people will be like happy with our approach to this. But at the time I realized like people want the shiny toy and it's frustrating. I totally get that.
I saw a visual, and I don't know if it was accurate, but it showed GPT 3.5 versus, I guess, what GPT-4 is expected. And
I saw that thing on Twitter.
Did you? was that
Complete
accurate?
bullshit. No.
Okay, because that was a little bit
no.
scary.
The GPT-4 rumor mill is like a ridiculous thing. I don't know where it all comes from. I don't know why people don't have like better things to speculate on. I get a little bit of it, like it's sort of fun, but that it's been going for like 6 months at this volume. People are begging to be disappointed. And they will be. Like it's, you know, people are going to, like the hype is just like, we don't have an actual AGI. And I think that's sort of what is expected of us. And, you know, yeah, we're going to disappoint those people.
Video. Is that coming?
It will come. I wouldn't want to make a confident prediction about when. Obviously, like, people are interested in it. We'll try to do it. Other people will try to do it. It could be like pretty soon. It's a legitimate research project, so it could be pretty soon. It could take a while.
Okay.
Y todo esto es hablando en el corto plazo, pero cuando alguien como Sam Altman, que lidera OpenAI, mira hacia el futuro, exactamente cómo ve el desarrollo de la inteligencia artificial, y más concretamente, cómo ve el desarrollo de la AGI, la Artificial General Intelligence.
The future I would like to see is where access to AI is super democratized, where there are several AGIs in the world that can kind of like help allow for multiple viewpoints and not have any one get too powerful, and that the cost of intelligence and energy, because it gets commoditized, trends down and down and down, and the massive surplus there, access to the systems, eventually governance of the systems, benefits all of us. So, yeah, I sort of hope that happens. I think competition is good, at least, you know, until we get to AGI. I like deeply believe in capitalism and competition to offer the best service at the lowest price. What I think is going to happen is society will have to agree and like set some laws on what an AGI can never do, or what one of these systems should never do. And one of the cool things about the path of the technology tree that we're on, which is very different, like before we came along and it was sort of DeepMind having these games that were like, you know, having agents play each other and try to deceive each other and kill each other and all of that, which I think could have gone in a bad direction. We now have these language models that can understand language. And so we can say, hey, you know, model, here's what we'd like you to do. Here are the values we'd like you to align to. And we don't have it working perfectly yet, but it works a little and it'll get better and better. And the world can say, all right, here are the rules. Here's the very broad bounds, very broad, like absolute rules of a system. But within that, people should be allowed very different things that they want their AI to do. And so if you want the super, like, you know, never offend, safe for work model, you should get that. And if you want an edgier one that, you know, is sort of like creative and exploratory, but says some stuff you like might not be comfortable with, or some people might not be comfortable with, you should get that. And I think there will be many systems in the world that have different settings of the values that they enforce. And really what I think, and this will take longer, is that you as a user should be able to write up a few pages of, here's what I want, here are my values, here's how I want the AI to behave, and it reads it and thinks about it and acts exactly how you want, because it's like, it should be your AI, and you know, it should be there to serve you and do the things you believe in. So that to me is much better than one system where like one tech company says, here are the rules. Mm-hmm. I think society should regulate what the kind of the wide bounds are. But then I think individual users should have a huge amount of liberty to decide how they want their experience and their interaction to go. So I think it is like a combination of society, like there are a few asterisks on the free speech rules. And society has decided like free speech not quite absolute. I think society will also decide like language models not quite absolute. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of speech that is legal that you find distasteful, that I find distasteful, that he finds distasteful. And we all probably have somewhat different definitions of that. And I think it is very important that that is left to the responsibility of individual users and groups, not one company, and that the government there like govern and not dictate all of the rules.
Y sobre esto alguien del público le preguntó pues cómo veía el mejor escenario posible y el peor escenario posible en cuanto al desarrollo de la inteligencia artificial.
I mean, I think the best case is like so unbelievably good that it's like hard to I think it's like hard for me to even imagine. Like I can sort of think about what it's like when we make more progress of discovering new knowledge with these systems than humanity has done so far, but like in a year instead of 70,000. I can sort of imagine what it's like when we kind of like launch probes out to the whole universe and find out really, everything going on out there. I can sort of imagine what it's like when we have just like unbelievable abundance and systems that can sort of, help us resolve deadlocks and improve all aspects of reality and kind of like let us all live our best lives. But I can't quite I think the good case is just so unbelievably good that you sound like a really crazy person to start talking about it. And the bad case, and I think this is like important to say, is like lights out for all of us. I'm more worried about like an accidental misuse case in the short term where, someone gets a super powerful, like it's not like the AI wakes up and decides to be evil. And I think all of the sort of traditional AI safety thinkers reveal a lot more about themselves than they mean to when they talk about what they think the AGI is going to be like. But I can see the accidental misuse case clearly, and that's super bad. So I think I think it's like impossible to overstate the importance of AI safety and alignment work. I would like to see much more happening, but I think it's more subtle than most people think.
Y entonces, la pregunta del millón, ¿para cuándo la AGI? ¿Para cuándo la inteligencia artificial general?
The closer we get, the harder time I have answering, because I think that it's going to be much blurrier and much more of a gradual transition than people think. If you imagine like a 2x2 matrix of sort of short timelines until the AGI takeoff era begins and long timelines until it begins, and then a slow takeoff or a fast takeoff. The world I think we're heading to, and the safest world, the one I most hope for, is the short timeline, slow takeoff. But I think people are going to have hugely different opinions about when and there you kind of like declare victory on the AGI thing.
Y ante este futuro donde se prevé pues, que va a haber un gran impacto por parte de la inteligencia artificial, pues hay que empezar a plantearse pues, medidas políticas, cambios sociales, y sobre esto alguien del público le preguntó por la UBI, que es la Universal Basic Income, la renta básica universal. ¿Cuál era su opinión?
I think UBI is good and important, but very far from sufficient. I think it is like a little part of the solution. I think it's great. Like I think we should, as AGI participates more and more in the economy, I think we should distribute wealth and resources much more than we have. And that'll be important over time. But I don't think that's going to like solve the problem. I don't think that's going to give people meaning. I don't think it means people are going to like entirely stop trying to create and do new things and whatever else. So I sort of would consider it like an enabling technology, but not like a plan for society.
Can I ask selfishly, so if UBI is only part of the solution, and I've got teenagers and we all have jobs, what should we be preparing for? As I said, my son's teacher was trying to prepare them, but of course you would maybe be better positioned to have some ideas on this.
Resilience, adaptability, ability to like learn new things quickly, creativity, although it'll be aided creativity. Like in some sense, before Google came along, there was like a bunch of things that we learned. Like memorizing facts was really important, and that changed. Yeah. And now I think learning will change again. And will probably adapt faster than we think. Like, again, in general, we are very much here to build AGI. And products and services are tactics in service of that, partnerships too. But important ones, and we really want to be useful to people. And I think if we just build this in a lab and don't figure out how to get it out into the world, that's like somehow we're really falling short there.
Y ojo a lo que dice aquí, desarrollar esta tecnología en el laboratorio y no convertirla en productos y servicios reales es quedarse corto, ¿no? Esto es un dardo directo que le está lanzando a Google, pues por todo este sentimiento que existe desde hace un par de años, donde Google está desarrollando tecnología que en muchos casos es superior a lo que tiene OpenAI, pero no está liberando nada.
Well, I wondered what you made of the fact that Google has said to its employees, it's too imperfect, it could harm our reputation, we're not ready.
I hope when they launch something anyway, you really hold them to that comment. I'll just leave it there.
Y aquí es donde Sam Altman pues ha dicho, bueno, espero que cuando saquen productos les sigamos recordando ese comentario. ¿Por qué? Pues se ha visto ya, ¿no? Como Google en las últimas semanas ha apretado el botón rojo y ha comentado que para 2023 iban a empezar a sacar productos a la vista de cómo OpenAI y Microsoft, que está ligada a la propia OpenAI, pues les está ganando terreno. Aquí Google ha cambiado su estrategia y entonces Sam pues está comentando esto de atentos cuando saquen productos porque van a ser imperfectos y esto choca con lo que estaban diciendo hace un año. En cualquier caso, todo esto se verá y aprovechando que se ha abierto el melón de Google, pues hay quien aprovecha para preguntarle si la tecnología de OpenAI realmente supone el fin de Google, como muchos están diciendo.
Yeah, I think whenever someone talks about a technology being the end of some other giant company, it's usually wrong. I think people forget they get to make a counter move here, and they're pretty smart, pretty competent. But I do think there is a change for search that will probably come at some point, but not as dramatically as people think in the short term. My guess is that people are going to be using Google the same way people are using Google now for quite some time, and also Google, for whatever this whole code red thing is probably not going to change that dramatically, would be my guess.
Y como ya he dicho, pues con quien sí tiene muy buenas relaciones con Microsoft, que es uno de los principales inversores dentro de OpenAI y es la que se está quedando pues los derechos para poder explotar en sus productos gran parte de la tecnología que desarrollan estos. Entonces, sobre esto, Sam comenta.
It's great. They're the only tech company out there that I think I'd be excited to partner with this deeply. I think Satya is an amazing CEO, but more than that, human being and understands the stakes of what AGI means and why we need to have all the weirdness we do in our structure and our agreement with them. And so I really feel like it's a very values-aligned company, and there's some things they're very good at, like building very large supercomputers and the infrastructure we operate on and putting the technology into products. There's things we're very good at, like doing research, and it's been a great partnership.
Can you comment on whether the reports are accurate that it's going to be in Bing and Office, or maybe it's already in those things?
You are a very experienced and professional reporter. You know I can't comment on that. I know you know I can't comment on that. I know you can't comment on that. In the spirit of shortness of life and our precious time here, why do you ask?
Sam.
I'm genuinely curious.
I need answers. Well, I mean,
if you ask a question, I'm not going to answer.
Well, I thought you might answer that
No.
one. No, okay. I know there's some things you don't answer, but I got to try.
Another company's product plans, I'm definitely not going to touch.
Y por último, pero no menos interesante, hay un punto de la conversación que se centra en hablar de todas las inversiones en las que Sam Altman está involucrado, desde aquellas que van por la parte de Y Combinator, que es la aceleradora de startups en las que él estuvo al frente, hasta las que lleva a nivel personal, que dice que son en torno a las 400 empresas. Muchas de ellas ligadas a la investigación y al desarrollo de herramientas que podrían ser muy relevantes a futuro. Y de todas ellas hay una empresa que me parece muy interesante y de la cual han hablado, que llevo siguiendo desde hace un tiempo y que yo no sabía que él estaba involucrado como inversor, que es Helion. Una empresa que promete en las próximas décadas pues traer una versión comercialmente viable de la fusión nuclear.
I try to just do things that I'm interested in at this point. And so I've tried to hold myself to the stuff that I really love, which tends to be the hard tech years of R&D, capital intensive, or risky art, risky research, but if it works, it really works. Helion is more than an investment to me. That's the other thing besides OpenAI I spend a lot of time on, and just super excited about what's going to happen there. Not sort of getting Fusion to work in a lab, although that is cool too, but building a system that will work at a super low cost. So if you look at the previous energy transitions, if you can get the cost of a new form of energy down, it can like take over everything else in a couple of decades, just phenomenally fast. And then also a system where we can create enough energy and enough reliable energy, both in terms of the machines not breaking and also not having like the intermittence or the need for storage of solar or wind or something like that. If we can create enough for Earth in like 10 years, and I think that's actually the hardest challenge that Helion faces, as we sketch out what it takes operationally to do that, to replace all the current generative capacity on Earth with fusion and to do it really fast, and to like think about what it really means to build a factory that's capable of like putting out 2 of these machines a day for a decade. That's really hard, but also a super fun problem. So I think I'm very happy there's a fusion race. I think that's great. I'm also very happy solar and batteries are getting so cheap. But I think what will matter is who can deliver energy the cheapest and enough of it. I think probably will work either. But to what I was just saying earlier, I think it will be commercially irrelevant. They also think it'll be commercially irrelevant. The thing that is so exciting to me about Helion is that it's a simple machine that is an affordable cost and a reasonable size. There's a bunch of different elements of it than like the giant tokamaks, but one that is very cool is what comes out of the reaction is charged particles, not heat. Almost all other sort of like, like a coal plant or a natural gas plant or whatever makes heat, drives a steam turbine. That's what it does. Helion makes charged particles which push back on the magnet and drive an electrical current down a wire. There's no heat cycle at all. And so it can be a much simpler, much more efficient system. And that I think is like missed out of the whole discussion on fusion, but really great. It also means we don't have to deal with like much nuclear material. We don't ever have like dangerous waste or even a dangerous system. You could like touch it pretty shortly after it turns off.
Has it proven its thesis?
We will have more to share there shortly. I think by like 2028, pending, good fortune with regulators, we could be plugging them into the grid. And I think we'll do it, a really great demo well before that, like hopefully pretty soon.
Si os interesa el tema de la fusión nuclear y en concreto de esta empresa Helion, os recomiendo ver este vídeo de aquí, de este canal Real Engineering, donde lo explica muy bien y con mucho detalle, y por equilibrar un poco de expectativas también este otro vídeo de aquí donde critica el primer vídeo que os he recomendado, así tenéis un poco la visión más completa. Pero bueno, con esto espero que lo hayáis visto. Sam Altman es una de las personas más interesantes a escuchar actualmente para poder entender cómo va a ser el progreso y el futuro de la inteligencia artificial. Creo que nos ha dado unas cuantas pistas muy interesantes de hacia dónde estamos yendo, y siendo él uno de los protagonistas detrás de una de las empresas fundamentales en todo lo que está pasando, pues me parecía muy interesante traerlo aquí al canal. Con esto espero que os haya gustado este vídeo, que es un poquito diferente a lo que hacemos habitualmente aquí, y bueno, os dejo abajo en la cajita de descripción todos los vídeos que he comentado y también los vídeos completos a esta entrevista. También tenéis por aquí un par de vídeos sobre inteligencia artificial que seguramente son muy interesantes, y chicos, chicas, nos vemos con más contenido la próxima semana aquí en DotsSV.